Hey Internet, welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction.
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. IssuesETC.org.
And it is the week after Christmas. Yesterday was the day of St. Stephen. We got the day of the Holy Innocents coming up. Lots and lots of liturgical flair for those of you who want to kind of have some home devoting. Always remember, a good resource for that is the Treasury of Daily Prayer that puts into order all those special days with little kind of snippets to tell you about what's going on in the church year. We live in an age where this kind of thing's probably not going to be happening at your local parish. It's up to the family to pass on this history, this culture that we have as a people, culture of the martyrs, a culture of the confession of the true faith to our kids. So don't forget about those things as part of your 12 days of Christmas tradition. Yo. But hey, so we're here today to get ready for this coming Sunday, which is not only New Year's Day, although it is New Year's Day every year, about a week after Christmas, but New Year's Day just happens to fall on another day, an important day in the history of the church, the day when we remember the naming and circumcision of Jesus. And you got several kind of appointed texts for this day, all swirling around one verse that it really is, the whole point is to remember the one verse, but then, well, usually you don't just preach on one verse, so there's some other text connected to it as well. This week, the appointed text is Luke chapter 2, verses 21 and then 22 through 40, somewhere in there, and it kind of stops and goes depending on what part of the lectionary you're looking at. But the whole point is to remember what takes place in Luke chapter 2, verse 21. And at the end of 8 days, or from the Greek pimplete, I mean, you just gotta love a word like that, pimplete. Pimplete? It just means to be fulfilled or to come to pass. So when the 8 days were ended, when 8 days had been fulfilled, at the end of 8 days, they paratemnoed him. They circumcised him, and they called the name of him Jesus. The thing he was called by the angel when they caught him in the belly. Suleimphtheni koilia. Again, shorthand for when he was conceived. Now really, technically, that's it. That's the text. That's what the day is all about. Now there's more text. We'll kind of look at it briefly, but this is kind of the summation. What is going on here? And why did the early church consider it so important to spend an entire day remembering this? And really, even why does Luke bother to even tell us this? The name has already been given to Jesus by the angel. Why? What's going on with the circumcision and all that? There's a couple different tracks you can take, but probably the big first one, the one you want to not miss at all, is the fact that Jesus is born under the law in order to redeem those who are under the law. And by law, it doesn't just mean the law written on our hearts, the natural law which we have in the 10 Commandments, but in fact under the Old Covenant law of Israel, the law which was set up on Sinai as a treaty agreement between God and this tribal people, that he was going to be their God and make them a nation from which he would bring salvation for the whole world through the rule of a king. This covenant required a whole lot of stuff. Certain types of clothing you had to wear, could eat this, couldn't eat that, on top of, well, really keeping a moral law pretty much perfectly as well. All of that hovers around this Ark of the Covenant, this box which was kept in a building or a tent, and they threw blood on it every year, and the blood was from bulls and goats, and that was part of this law that also had to be kept because it was this treaty of God to bless the world through this keeping. Now if you pay attention to what Luke's been doing through chapter 1 and 2, this temple where this Ark of the Covenant should have been is huge. It shows up right off the bat in Luke chapter 1. Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, first sees an angel telling him about what's going to happen where? While he's serving as a priest in the temple. Now the temple doesn't exactly show up immediately in the next section when Mary is being told by the angel that she's going to have a child, but the angel does tell her that the Lord is going to give this child the throne of his father David, which is totally connected to this temple thing, this nation on the Jerusalem Mount with a king who reigns and sings the Psalter, right, at the temple. But there's a twist going on here because the Holy Spirit is going to overshadow not the temple as he did when Solomon consecrated that temple, and literally a cloud coming down and living inside it. He's going to overshadow instead Mary. Is Mary the temple? Ha, no. Keep reading. There's a lot more of this kind of language alluding to temple stuff, things like God visiting his people in the Song of Zechariah, things like remembering his mercy to Israel in the Magnificat sung by Mary. But now it's making a comeback here in chapter chapter 2, and it's going somewhere pretty special. So the temple has played a primary role in the opening of this segment. And now, here's this child coming from an overshadowed womb, proclaimed by angels in the glorious highest places of heaven as the Son of God, as the heir to David's throne. And on the 8th day of his birth, born as the heir to David's throne under the law which conscripted the nation of Israel itself, he is circumcised. That's part of the law, that part of the sign to the world that this people is set apart, that this people is different, that there is something going on here, which is connected to the shedding of blood, which is all about that temple and the marks being made at that temple and the forgiveness being purchased at that temple. Only something's kind of weird, something's kind of missing. And even though they're not at the temple yet, nonetheless, circumcised on the 8th day, guess what's missing from the temple? That Ark of the Covenant. It's been gone ever since Babylon took away Israel, took away all the items of the temple, back in their faithless days when the idolatry of the nations had deceived them and led them astray. Everything was taken away and it was cataloged by the prophets so that when they returned, everything was brought back and set up on the Temple Mount, which would come to be a new beautiful temple, which was there in Jesus' day, except for one thing, that most important thing, that center thing, that box of the covenant. See, it's of the covenant. The covenant doesn't exist without the box. Well, the box is missing. On the 8th day, they shed his blood, and they gave him the name which the angel had given him, Jesus, which is a Greek rendition of the Hebrew name Joshua, which is an Americanized version of the actual Hebrew name Yeshua, which is a smashing together of two words in the Hebrew, Yahweh, Jehovah, however you want to say it, the Lord as we usually translate it, and the word he saves. He will save, he does save, salvation. They named him the Lord saves. Saves what? Saves the covenant, saves David's throne, saves Jerusalem, saves Israel, saves the world, saves you. They named him this. And, next verse, when the time came for their purification according to the law of Moses. That is, after 40 days, when the bleeding that came with childbearing was considered ritually to have stopped, they brought him where? Up to Jerusalem to present him where? In the temple. Where? In the temple. Where? In the temple. To the Lord. To who? To himself? Well, yeah, kinda. Hey, how's that work without the Trinity? It doesn't. To present him to the Lord, as it is written in that law of the Lord, those codes, those covenantal ritualistic restrictions, it is written, every male who first opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. That means set apart, special, and to offer sacrifice, according to what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 pigeons, which was the cheap requirement for those who were poor and couldn't afford oxen and things like that. So just like that, something amazing is happening where? In the temple. If you're not watching carefully, you'll miss it. After 40 days, the cloudy, overshadowed place on earth where the infinite God has become finite ascends to Jerusalem to bear the curse through sacrifice. After 40 days, the cloudy, overshadowed place on earth where the infinite God has become finite ascends to Jerusalem to bear the curse through sacrifice. You with me? After 40 days, the cloudy, overshadowed place on earth where the infinite God has become finite ascends to Jerusalem to bear the curse through sacrifice. I mean, because there was this whole 40 years in the wilderness thing before they entered the promised land, and then all of that was about being around this covenant, this Ark of the Covenant, which was where God through sacrifice was saving his people, and it gets placed on the mountain of Jerusalem by King David in order to have all of this kind of project what is going to come to pass, only it never comes to pass. Even David's kingdom was limited and failed, not only during his life, but then in the life of his sons. It was broken, it was rifted, the cloud departed, the ark was gone. Where, oh where is the comfort and consolation of Israel? And just like that, after 40 days, the Ark of the Covenant shows up, and his name is Jesus. They named him that because he is the action of the Lord saving this world in ways we could not possibly have expected. Born under the law to save those under the law, redeeming us by keeping the law for our sakes and taking our punishment, our debt to the law on himself, nailed to the cross, giving us what we don't deserve, not even a little bit. Absolution, pardon, peace. I pronounce you guilty, but guess what? I pronounce you innocent. Go. Get out of the courtroom. You're done. Go home. Enjoy your life. Actually, come home with me to a better world. Yo, right on. And now there was in Jerusalem a man waiting for the consolation, the paracleting, go figure that one out, of Israel. Why is he waiting for the consolation of Israel? What's he looking for? He's looking for the king to come. He's looking for the temple to be restored to its glory with the true Ark of the Covenant in it. He's looking for the salvation his God has promised is the purpose of them being a people. Salvation not just for the Jew, but for the Gentile, for the nations also. His name is Simon. And somehow, don't ask me how, in many and various ways God spoke to his people of old by the prophets, the Holy Spirit had revealed to him that he would not see death until he had seen the Lord's Christ, the Lord's anointed one, the King, coming to save Israel and the world with it. And he came in the Spirit into the temple that same day. And when the parents brought in the child Jesus, named 32 days prior, or some such thing, but now to do according to the custom of the law for him, that he might keep the law for you, Simeon runs up and takes the child in his arms and says, Lord, now you are letting your servant die. Depart in peace, according to your rhema word. Track that word in, Luke. For mine eyes have seen your salvation in this baby I hold right here. This baby that you have prepared in the presence of all peoples. This baby that is a light to reveal you to the nations and the glory, the consolation of your people, Israel. The text goes on and there's more you could say, but that really summarizes the whole point of it right there. Whether you hear preached only the small one verse or the whole section, the idea here going on is that the birth of Jesus is not the end of the story. It is just the beginning, plopped right in the middle of the longer great history of the world, from the moment when we broke the world and destroyed it in our forefathers to the moment when God said, I'm going to fix it for you, to the moment when he said to Abraham, through you and those who come after you, I will fix it, to the moment when he said to David, through you on this mountain with this place, I will fix it, all the way down to this moment when this poor little couple with a miraculously born baby tread quietly in to do due diligence and keep the codes and find that they have brought not just any old kid to be set apart as holy, but the one who would replace those turtle doves, shedding his blood as he'd already begun to do on the 8th day, for the sake of the 8th day, the next day, the life of the world to come, 3 days after his death on the 6th day, resting in the tomb on the 7th day, on the new day, the dawn of the next creation, the 8th day, rising from the dead, leaving behind the blood guilt paid. All of this already begun, the point of the temple, place where God meets earth in Jesus Christ for you. Yo-yo, see you Friday.